Sports presents
The noise! You know what we're here to do. We're here to bring you James Boyd and Boyd's News. How are you doing, everybody? Thank you for tuning in. We're glad that you're here for another edition of Boyd's Noise. This is Iron Skillet's presentation of James Boyd, the prep columnist and reporter for the Northwest Indiana Times. So before we get started, James, let me ask you, how are you doing today?
Doing good. Feel like things are in a rhythm, and it has some exciting news, obviously, that we'll get to soon. But as always, I'm excited about the job, excited about the kids in the region, and, just hoping to keep it going.
Yeah, we're going to talk about week 4 in the prep news, and we're going to talk about a lot of things going on inside the region. But look, let's get to the main story. And the main story right now is breaking news that Calumet High School is getting football back. Football is coming back to Calumet High School. So, James, tell the listeners what's going on at Calumet High School as this story breaks right now.
Yeah, so they were, basically suspended because of the coronavirus pandemic ever since August 5th. So a little over a month. And then yesterday they had another school board meeting and finally voted to resume fall contact sports, which in addition to football also includes volleyball at Calumet. They don't have soccer teams at Calumet, but like I said, volleyball and football are back. It's pretty exciting. Now it's just a matter of the football team getting 10 practices in before they can play. So they won't play this Friday at home against Griffith. That game has been canceled, but they will play their last 3 regular season games of the season, and that includes their season opener next week at home against Lake Station. Then they'll face River Forest at home in week 8, and in week 9 they'll close out their season. So, I mean, it's pretty exciting stuff, just because the kids for a while there weren't sure if they were going to have the season. You know what I mean? So I was waiting around yesterday and knew they had the school board meeting, and I wanted to just basically keep my eyes peeled to whatever was going to happen. And I was contacting the coach all day just to make sure, I knew when things were going to kind of be decided. And, to my surprise, honestly, they got resumed. So it's pretty big news. Obviously, the biggest news coming out of the region, I think, this week so far. And you will be hard-pressed to find anything else just because that elation is there. I mean, if they don't decide to come back yesterday or decide for them to start practicing this week, they were probably going to lose their football season. I mean, because you still have to get those 10 practices in. And if they lost another week, it was just getting bleaker and bleaker for them to have a season. And obviously, the boys are excited to, have a chance to not only play, but, Calumet's in my opinion, one of the better small schools in the area. So they have a shot, if they can get rolling, to make some noise, hopefully in the postseason.
Hey, James, have you found out how are they going to do this playoffs with teams coming in late? You're going to have some teams who played some games, some teams who didn't play games. Is it just going to be we're going to let everybody in the playoffs, or we're going to just rank them 1 to whatever it is in the conference and just let them play like that? Have you heard how they're going to do that?
Yeah, so the postseason, I went over this before, and I've been kind of explaining to everybody, and I probably need to tweet it out again, but there is no minimum amount of games you have to play to be eligible for the playoffs. The IHSA has said that you can theoretically play 0 games and still go right into the postseason and play.
Wow.
So it doesn't matter if you have 3 games like Calumet will have after the regular season over, or if you have 9 games like some other teams that have been fortunate to get. It doesn't matter at all. And then as far as seeding goes in the playoffs, Indiana always does it randomly. So that will have again, games, wins, and losses will not have an effect on who you play in the postseason. It's really just a random draw. Just got to sit around on that selection Sunday and see who gets picked and who gets slotted where. So that's a big thing. The only caveat is if you are to get into the postseason, start playing, and you have a COVID-19 outbreak within your team and you can't play, then that game is ruled as a no contest, and the team you're going to play advances. So basically, if you have a COVID-19 outbreak during the postseason and you're unable to play, your season is over. So that's a big thing, and I think people realize that, but it's probably not getting as much attention now because the playoffs aren't here yet. But when we get to the playoffs, I would not be surprised if out of the hundreds of teams playing in the state, that we have a handful of teams that are unable to play due to COVID-19, which will be obviously catastrophic for their season. But it's just one of those things where it's basically whoever can make it to the finish line.
You know what, James? Let the listeners know How did the board come about deciding that Calumet High School was going to have a season this year, this late in the season? What was the process that they went through to come to this decision?
Yeah, so that's the question I asked yesterday to Calumet football coach Rick Good, and he didn't really have an answer for me. He told me that he didn't really ask. All he heard was we're back, and he thought that, hey, that's enough, and I won't, push any further or try to, get any more information on that. And when I talked to, I didn't have a chance to reach out to the superintendent's office yesterday because obviously they were closed at like 7 p.m. when this news came out. But I think one of the things is that I believe the COVID positivity rate is going down in the state, and even in addition to that, there were players that held rallies and demonstrations to get their season back. I'm not saying that weighed into the decision at all, but I mean, from an outside perspective, it would be pretty hard to ignore the noise around Calumet football because the players were so adamant about voicing their opinion about trying to play. And fortunately for them, that they got what they wished. So I don't know if it's the right decision. I think people are kind of getting me confused with being like a fan, but it's like I just report what happens. Obviously, I'm happy the kids get to play, but at the end of the day, I still don't know if that's the right decision because we all don't know the lasting effects of COVID-19 and what the future holds. It's ironic because you got Calumet starting up and then Michigan City had to shut down for 2 weeks. So I mean, it's a give and take with this unprecedented time we're living in.
Yeah, with this time that we're living in, we've got to look back at some of the things that are going on. But listen, we just talked about lost seasons and people who have lost their season. You had a very interesting article where you talked about the lost season, and the lost season is Whiting coach Brett Jennings. And now he's finding peace doing something that I don't know if the listeners really know. James, can you share what Coach is doing right now?
Yeah, so Coach Jennings, one of the best guys, I think, in the region as far as just people in general. He's been calling games for WJOB since his season got canceled August 10th by the school city of Whiting. They canceled all fall sports. So cross-country football and soccer and things like that are all done at Whiting. And then, in the meantime, he's just kind of stepped up to the plate and found a way to still be around the game he loves. So he's called 2 games so far. He did the Andrina Lake Central game in week 2, and he did Lake Central at Portage in week 3. And he told me he's going to do probably a couple more depending on advertisements and things like that, and if they're able to allow him to go out to games. But I think it's a bittersweet thing. And in the story, he basically told me it was bittersweet because as badly as he wants his players to be out there, since they can't, he's still happy that other teams are able to compete and he's able to do some more unique things on Friday nights. Like, for example, people don't realize football coaches don't get to see other teams. They don't get to go to other games. They have to worry about their team every Friday night. So for the first time in a very long time, probably about 20 years for him, he was able to go to a different school's game and see some of the teams that he always reads about and hears about, but up close in person. So that was pretty cool from his perspective. He also got help from his brother, Brian Jennings, who is a assistant principal over at Griffith, baseball coach as well. He's been a long-time freelance announcer as well. So he got some tips from his brother. His brother has been doing this for like 30 years, play-by-play announcing. So it was kind of cool for him to step into his other brother's role and for a couple of Friday nights. So I think it was a timely story. But again, it's ironic that Calumet starts up, GSSC school, Greater South Shore Conference school, and Whiting can't. You have people saying that maybe Whiting and the Heyman schools decided too soon to cancel the season. But at the same time, like I said before, you don't really know how this will play out. So I think we won't really know, honestly, until this season is over and we all have time to reflect on what happens and also get to see who may have been affected by COVID-19 as far as positive tests, outbreaks, and things like that.
Yeah, James, it's really interesting what schools, what districts were able to play and what districts weren't able to play. How do they gauge with this COVID breakout? Have you heard anything whatsoever how they're going to gauge that? Is it if one kid gets it, 2 kids get it? I mean, does it just go by? Does the conference have anything to say about that? How do they know when they're going to be able to, if they have to shut down playing like what Michigan City was able to do?
Yeah, so it's basically the IHSA has left it up to the schools and then the counties. And I think a lot of times when it comes to these COVID-19 positive cases, I've done probably about 20 stories on restarts and stops and possible exposure and things like that. And one thing I will say is that a lot of it is kept under wraps. They'll give you the vaguest information, but just keep you informed, just let you know, hey, we're going to shut down. But they never really tell you how many players it is, if it was a coach. Usually they'll say it's a coach. They won't say who it is specifically, which I respect. You definitely don't want to, especially a kid, you don't want to put a kid out there and have them, people to be able to point the finger at them and say, hey, you won this season, because obviously they don't choose to get this virus. But it's basically up to the schools and the counties. And then from my side, on the reporting side, again, it's just finding out, when they make these announcements, because I do think the schools have been very forthcoming in that regard. Maybe they're not always specific, like I said, but they will let you know, hey, we can't play. And for me, at the end of the day, if you don't play, you don't have to tell me you don't play. We see the scores every Friday night. If you're not playing, at some point we're going to be like, oh, they didn't play. And then I have to ask questions. So it's better for the schools to get out in front of it, which they've done. But again, it's basically a free-for-all, and basically trusting that your administrators in your schools will do the right thing and tell people if they have a positive case.
Yeah.
As we always do, when we start talking the noise, we have to talk about what's happened during the week. And this is our wrap-up session, and this is where we do an overview of the week that was and what's getting ready to occur. So, James, let's go through. If I'm correct, it was week 4, correct?
Yes, sir.
Okay, so let's go through week 4. What were the things that surprised you or stood out the most as we get ready to move into week 5?
Yes, I do want to say that EC Central started their season last week. I didn't get a chance to do a story on EC Central starting back up. So sometimes it can be hard getting in contact with coaches when they're trying to get things rolling, especially when they're starting to start their season. So I don't blame them in any regard, but they did start their season. They played and drained and lost, but again, I guess they were just happy to be out there because, again, at some point you wonder if the Cardinals were able to be able to come back. So they came back and played, and Drain won that game. Boone Grove beat Bishop Knoll. Chesterton looked pretty good against LaPorte. Crown Point got a win over Lake Central. Hanover Central won over River Forest. Highland shut out, not shut out, but they dominated Lake Station. Hobart shut out Culver Academies. I took the trip out to Morocco, Indiana to watch, I hope I'm saying that right, to watch Kankakee Valley in North Newton. Yeah, I took a ride. It was definitely a lot of back roads and pitch black driving back with no street lights. It was like, man, people out there, it seems like you're driving, it's all you see is corn, and then you see a big high school. So yeah, it was fun to take a trip. And the first 3 weeks I had covered Maryville games, and I think it was good for me to get away from that team. Not because I have anything against them, it's just that I know what to expect. I can probably tell you every player by name and face and number and things like that. So it's good for me to always kind of balance it out and see other programs. Kankakee Valley is 4-0 for the first time since 2012. Wow! So they're rolling. And then we also had Lowell. They beat Griffith. Maryville put it on Portage 58-19. In my opinion, Maryville, like I've said before, is the best team in the region, I think. And honestly, I think that the only reason I can really say that confidently is that they played 4 games and Buffalo only played 2. Buffalo wasn't able to play last week. They're supposed to play Michigan City. So even though we're 4 weeks in, they only have 2 games and 2 wins. So I think it'll be good for them to get back in action this week. And then also, of course, you got that Maryville and Buffalo matchup on October 2nd. So as long as that goes off without a hitch, I think we'll be able to confidently say who's the best program in the region. And then wrapping up the last of the scores, Rensselaer beat Munster. Westside beat Bowman for the first time in 5 years. And then Wheeler beat South Central. So it was a busy week on Friday. It's always busy on Friday nights. I always like looking on my timeline. I'm tweeting out scores and kind of catching up with who else is doing what. So it was an exciting week. And like I said, took a trip out to Morocco. And the crazy thing is they're the Spartans, the North Newton Spartans, blue and orange. And I wore an Illini hoodie, and I was going to take it off because it was hot. But then I realized their mascot is the Spartans, and I had my old high school shirt on, Romeo those Spartans, and of course, it's blue and orange. So I couldn't take it off because I don't want anybody thinking I'm like biased, but I really had no idea that they were going to be. I knew they were Spartans, but I didn't think they were going to be one, blue and orange, and then 2, the exact same symbol that we used for my old high school. So that's what I get for wearing clothes from I think I got that shirt. It was track shirt from like 6 or 7 years ago, y'all. So it's just funny that I could still fit it, one, and two, I wore it to that particular game. It was good. It was a good time.
Hey, James, I still got my own track shirt too, man, from 1982. So, but I can't fit it though. That's what the problem is.
Yeah, the opposite
man, I
thing here
stayed the
was
same.
that you
Everybody's
had to
like,
wear it. Yeah, you got to be able to still wear that. I've got a shirt from high school. It's in a drawer. Yeah, I've
everybody expects me to gain weight, and I'm sure it'll come one day. But I'm still as skinny as I was in high school. Maybe probably a little skinnier because I don't lift weights anymore. I'm too busy writing about the other kids that lift weights.
There you go.
Right. You're too busy traveling. But let me ask you this, James. With what we've been watching in the region, we already have an assessment that you've got Maryville as your top team. You've got Valpo there as your number 2 team as far as strength is concerned. And we were watching them because they haven't had any COVID cases that we know of. Is it that Maryville is just strong because they've had full force, or are they the best team in the region?
In my opinion, I would say they're the best team. They seem loaded, just at every position, just a boatload of talent. And again, with those Morton transfers coming in, that just bolstered their team even more. But again, I do think that I have to give credit to Valparaiso because they hadn't lost. And it's tough to, kind of dock a team that hasn't lost. Mm-hmm. And their first one was pretty impressive. I mean, they were down, I believe, like 16-7 in the fourth quarter and came back and won 17-16. And they did a similar comeback against Maryville last year. So the thing about Valparaiso is they're disciplined, and you truly can never count them out, no matter who's in the game. They have this saying, set the standard. And basically, it's like the equivalent of next man up. We have to set the standard, and that goes for everyone on our team. So I think when they face adversity, more than any other team in the region, they seem to embrace it and usually come out on top these last 2 years. So I think that, again, that showdown at Maryville, between Maryville and Valparaiso on October 2nd will be the game to be at in the region. I'm sure it'll be covered by everybody. I should probably put in my request now to get a seat in the press box. But right. Aside from those two programs, I do want to give credit to, Hobart. I think is a great program as well, and the NCC, and Dran and the NCC, Lowell and the NCC. So I think, in my opinion, that the NCC conference will be the most interesting in football because even I believe that Hobart's the top team in the NCC. I think Andran's number 2, and I think Lowell's number 3. But then you got Kankakee Valley, who's 4-0, going to the conference play. So you have, 3 or 4 really good teams in that conference, which could be one of the more interesting conferences, and I think their conference hasn't been affected by any, COVID-19 cancellations just yet, and hopefully they won't. So there's other good programs. You got Hanover Central, who's playing well, and Portage, who went winless in DSU last year. They're picking up a couple wins this year, and they look totally different with a new coach, and some guys that took their lumps last year and they're bounced back this year. So it's fun. So it's weird to rank teams now and do things like that with the things that as far as cancellations and players might be quarantined and things like that. But I think in my opinion, it's safe to say that Maryville, Valparaiso, and Dran, Hobart, those 4 who ironically were all in semi-state games last year with Valpo advancing the state, those 4 seem to be like the top 4 in the region week in and week out.
James, in your travels going around to these different ball games, how have they handled with some fans coming into these games? Has it been different at every venue? Are they letting some fans in? How are they doing that when you're out there?
Yeah, every game is they have limited crowds, so you can't have the full packed fans experience you usually would get on Friday nights, especially with some of these bigger games. Like for example, I'll be going to Hobart at Lowell this Friday, big NCC game again. 2 top 5 teams, I believe. Yeah. In our rankings, and our new rankings will be coming out soon. But I mean, that's a game that would normally be packed probably to the brim. But I don't think that I know that they will not be allowed to have that full capacity. But for the most part, it's pretty normal. It's just less fans and more masks. But again, I think it's just what you have to do to ensure you have a chance to actually get out there and compete. So I think every week when I've come to a game, I tweet out, "Hey, I'm here. Keep wearing your mask because, if you don't, you run the risk of losing, the joy you're able to experience so far on Friday night."
Yeah.
Bring the noise! You know what we do. Every time you hear Bring the Noise, you know it's time for James Boyd's Player of the Week. And listen, we've got a really interesting one this time. We got a little twist for you. So, we're going to talk about who are the outstanding student athletes in and out the classroom. So, James, who are your players of the week?
Yeah, so I'll start with the girls this week. I'll go with Karina James, who is not because she has the same name as me, but she is from Lowell, a junior runner. She's a stud, man. Like, she is really, really, really good. I'll have to check, but I believe she's probably undefeated on the season so far out of the races she competed in. And she won the Bob Thomas invite this past Saturday at Lowell, which featured some of the top runners in the region. And one of the things I love about her is that she's just a class act all the time. It's funny interviewing cross-country runners right after they run because they're out of breath. But even when she's out of breath and she might be a little tired or winded or whatever, she always gives some really thoughtful answers and always gives credit to her coaching staff, her teammates, and the other runners for pushing her to be the best. So I think she probably will never say it, but I think she's got some of that dog in her, honestly, that tenacity, that competitiveness to go out there and show people like, yeah, there's other runners in the region, but I'm the top dog right now. And she's proven it this year so far, and I think she's going to be in the state, in my opinion, probably going to be in state title contention for cross country. So she's my female athlete of the week. And then on the boys' side, a little twist here, like you said, I choose the entire Calumet football team.
Wow.
They held a number of rallies to voice their opinions, restart their season. And again, I don't know how much that weighed into the board's decision. Didn't have a chance to speak to anybody on the board or even the superintendent about it. But when I talked to her last week, she told me that the board has heard, quote, the noise from the outside. So, and the players are basically telling me, like, hey, we're doing our best to create as much noise as we can to get what we want. So I think that a lot of it, too, and I talked to their coach about this, Rick Good, they may have been influenced to have a rally or a demonstration because of the rallies and demonstrations and protests they've seen around the country in regards to social justice.
Yeah.
And we talked about that and how they saw that as an opportunity to peacefully show their opinion. And he commended them for using their voice to basically stand up for what they believe in and what they think is right. So I give them credit more so for having the courage to do that as opposed to the outcome. Because, again, I don't know how much it weighs to the outcome, but for them to basically say, hey, we can't practice, but let's get together, wear our masks, and have our voice heard. I think that's the epitome of what you want from your young men as far as in a program to voice their opinion, do it safely, do it with class. And, again, that's why they're my male athletes of the week.
You know what? We always end the show with something really informative, and we always get James' thoughts on what's going on in the world of sports, not just in the region, but around the world. So, James, let's talk about your final thoughts, and let's talk about Naomi Osaka. Let's talk about a champion bringing an awareness to social injustice, not only in her sport, but around the country.
I mean, I tweeted this out. I will stand for Naomi Osaka until the end of time. Like, that is a remarkable young woman. Obviously, people can say what I love black women in general, just all over. I feel like black women have changed my life. They're the reason why I am the way I am. So anytime I can support them, whatever they're doing, I'm all for it. But for her to not only win the U.S. Open, but to wear those masks for Trayvon Martin, Breonna Taylor, Tamir Rice, and others, to basically bring an American issue to the global stage, because tennis is a global sport. And it might not be as watched in America as it is in other countries, but for her to kind of bring the attention to what's going on here in regards to black lives not being appreciated and valued, I thought that was remarkable. And then afterward, when she was interviewed, the interviewer, I believe from ESPN or one of the channels, he asked her, the white man, I think it was Tom Rinaldi actually, he asked her, hey, what message were you trying to get across with these masks? And she asked, well, what's the message you got? And I think that's the question. And she's so nice that she didn't let it linger. Because me, oh man, like, don't even ask. Like, I would have literally just stood there, and they teach you this in journalism, to when you ask the tough questions, you just let that silence sit there. until they answer, if they answer at all. But she kind of just backed off of it and said, hey, that's what I wanted to do, is start a dialogue, get people to understand and see what's going on and not be able to look at me and ignore it. But I thought that response, and you could tell there was a little gotcha moment for him. And I think it would have been nice for him to try to take that instance to answer. He didn't, which I hold against him necessarily. I don't think he's like evil or anything like that. But for her to kind of put him on the spot like that after just winning the U.S. Open, and it can, again, keep that attention on what's going on as far as life outside of sports was huge. So, like I said, I love her. She's amazing, a great talent, and I think it's always beautiful when you see, any athlete stand up for what they believe in, but especially a female athlete, especially a black athlete. And in her regard, she's both of them. And yeah, man, I was excited. I was very, very happy for her. Me and my family, we don't watch tennis ever unless it's Serena or Venus or Naomi or Coco or Sloane Stephens. So if they're black, we'll turn it on and watch the root for them like they're our family. So it was cool.
Yeah, it's such a cool, just to watch her. The march has been, and she's been a phenomenal athlete and someone who I think we should really spotlight a little bit more, as you said, and encourage when you see black women doing amazing things, not only in sports, but globally. It should be something that should be encouraged and talked about. But James, before we get out of here, last things, what is a story that you have coming up that you want the listeners to look out for and to check out coming up that you've done?
Yeah, all I can say, I'll keep this one under wraps because it's close to my heart. Gotta set up some interviews and see if they're willing to talk to you, which I think they will be. But just stay tuned for a column coming this Saturday night online and Sunday in the paper. I think it's timely, to say the least. I think it's worth getting out there. And again, something that means a lot to me and hopefully means a lot to the region. So just stay tuned. I'm always working. I always got ideas up the sleeve. But this one, I think when we talk about it next week, will be something that honestly resonates with a lot of people.
Well, we're going to leave it there, and I know listeners are going to be looking for this article, and everybody's really, when you come out with something, you get our little notice, so we go right there and find out what is it that James is writing about or talking about this week. So we're really excited. And this is another edition of Boyd's Noise here on Iron Skillet Radio, Iron Skillet Television. For Jay Sizzle, for G Sizzle, and for James Boyd, we'd like to thank you for listening to another edition of Boyd's Noise. Bring the noise!